and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Now, I'm going to continue today and do maybe 2 more charts concerning timing, and then I'm going to play something, and I'm going to help you to be able to count what the measures are as I'm playing it. This song I wrote this morning before I came over. This won't take too long, but it will show you how odd some of the timing is. Some professional musicians, they create, especially if they're jazz musicians or whatever, they can create some really odd kinds of time signatures. But I want to deal with the basic ones that we normally see. Now, here's 2/2 time. Here's your treble clef, 2/2. Well, that means there's only 2 beats to a measure. But what kind of a note gets 1 beat? A half note. So a full measure would be 2 half notes, because a half note here is only getting 1 beat. This is where things change and it gets a little odd. Or you can use 2/2 if you have that C I showed you before during the last segment. A C by itself, that's what it kind of looks like, actually means 4/4. But if you put a line through it, then it means 2/2, and sometimes is referred to cut time. So this equals 2/2, the same as this over here. It's cut time. So how do you write music for it? Well, it's not easy. Here is a whole note. This whole note is going to be worth 2 beats, the same as 2 half notes. Why? Because the time signature says there are 2 beats to a measure. So anything that's whole is worth the entire time that a measure would take. And in this case, 2 beats. So if it were 4/4 time, this would equal 4 beats. If it were 3/4 time, this would equal 3 beats. If it was 8 time, then you'd have 8. This would be worth 8 beats. Whatever was on the bottom, we're just counting what time is for a whole measure. Now the whole note here is going to be worth 2 beats. Or you can have 2 half notes, each one worth 1 beat. Well, what would a quarter be? A quarter note would be a little bit like an 1/8 note if you had 4/4 time. Everything is fractured. Everything is mathematical. And this gets a little confusing, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with it, but just to give you some familiarity. This is 1 beat. This is 2 beats. If you make quarter notes, it would be worth the same as an 1/8 note would be, because instead of a quarter note being worth 1 beat, a half a note is worth 1 beat. Split that in half, and you have 2 beats. That would be equivalent to what an 1/8 note would be in 4/4 time. Okay, so here's a half a rest, the 2 beat rest. So this is worth 1 beat because 2 beats to a measure. This is worth another beat, so that's a full measure. 1 note, 1 rest. And so that's 1 beat, and this is the second beat. Now you can have 2 half rests. Now remember, if you have a little rectangle on top of the 3rd line of the staff, it would be equivalent of half of a whole. So you get 2 of them, and this is a whole rest for the entire measure. 1 beat rest, 2 beat rest. Since this is half of the whole, it actually is worth 1 beat each, just like the half note is worth 1 beat each. And then this by itself is worth 2 beats. It's a whole rest. It's on the 4th line of the staff. It is worth a whole, whatever the whole is, only the whole is 2 beats. So this is just worth 2 beats. 4/4 time, it would be worth 4 beats. 3/4 time, it would be worth 3 beats. And this is the way that goes. It can be very odd. Although this isn't so odd, you can see it in marches and so forth. Let me take this down, and I have another chart, just one more to show you. I want to just show you a little bit about some very odd timing. You wouldn't get anything like that. In normal music. I just want you to expose yourself to it because it exists. Okay, 16/4. I've never seen 16/4, but it can exist. Technically, I can do it. 16 beats to a measure, and the type of note getting a full beat, a one beat, is a quarter note, because that's your 4. So you can have 16 quarter notes in a measure. This would be a whole measure. So let me just count it out for you. As I say, I've never seen it. I just want to expose you to it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These are quarter rests. 5, 6, 7, and there are 2 eighths to a quarter, so 7, these two would be the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's your 16 beats, and that could be one measure long. Now you notice that I have this little note here, and there's one line stem down and one line stem up. When you see something like that, it means it could be played by the treble clef, it could be played by the bass clef. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in terms of the worth of the note. It can be written in either way. If it's high enough, it'll be written with a stem to the left. If it's low enough, it'll be written with a stem to the right. But it really doesn't matter. Either treble or bass clef can do that. Okay, now here's another way. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's a whole note. Half note, 5, 6. Quarter note, 7, 8. Quarter rest, 9, 10, 11, 12. Half note, 13, 14. This is one beat because it's 16th note. This is 15, and that quarter note makes it 16. 16 beats, that's one whole measure. Now 16th notes are 4 notes to one beat, because it's half of what the eighth note would be. You get a 16, so you get 16s, 4 to a beat. So here's one beat, here's 2 beats. This is a whole note. 3, 4, 5, 6. It's worth 4. Half is worth 2. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and the aliquota makes it 16. What about just plain quarter notes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. What about eighth notes? Now remember, an eighth note is half of a quarter note. So it's 1 and 2 and rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and I don't know as I want to bother to count the rest, but trust me, you get 16 beats here. Well, what about this whole? This is worth 16 beats. It's a whole note. It is worth whatever the measure says it's worth, and since we're talking about 16 beats, this is worth 16 beats. So you can write music all kinds of different ways. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. I just want to expose you to this. Now, I'm going to play a piece which I composed just about an hour and a half ago. I mean, I wrote it just before I came in. And the reason I'm doing this, I want you to follow along and see how I'm counting it. This is 4/4 time. Whoops, we'll get it up first. This is 4/4 time, so this is 4 beats to a measure, and the type of note getting one beat is the quarter note. And there are a lot of quarter notes in here. One thing I want you to, this is kind of like an exercise. I want you to think about the kind of patterns that I use in this, that I repeat over and over. And you'll notice these 3 notes, and it has a 3 on it. That's going to be a triplet. Now here I put the little curve on it and then the 3 above the curve. It makes absolutely no difference. If you see the 3, it's a triplet. If you see the curve in the 3, it's still a triplet. You can write it either way, which is why I did, because I want you to recognize both. And so therefore, every measure has a triplet in it. And the other thing it has, every measure has something that's like an octave or an octave. Here's your high D, here's your low D. And I repeat that through the whole song. Here's a high D, a low D, a high D, a low D, a high D, and a low D, but it may sound better with that G, so I put them both in. If you get two notes, and they're written with one line, I wiggled it a little, but one line, you could play either note. Either note would be acceptable, either note would sound all right. You could do it either way. And you notice I have a quarter and a dotted quarter. That gives me 3 beats. Now it's written in four time, but this gives me 3 beats. And I'll explain why in a minute. So let me just play this. It's more like an exercise than anything else, but it does have some melody to it. Okay, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. Now, let's get back to this. This has 3 beats in it. If I am to count it, the measures are supposed to have 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, and a triplet. When you have a triplet, you have 3 notes to 1 beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That triplet is 1 beat, even though you're playing 3 notes. And so therefore that pattern continues with the octaves, high D, low D, high D, low D, high D, low D. Now, why do I want to do that? Well, I want to do that because I want to teach you about playing octaves. For a recorder, that low D and the high D, look, Ma, no hands. Just 1 finger down. Now what I do when I'm playing it, I'm doing it because I'm using the flute fingering. It just seems easier to me, but I need to tell you what the regular fingering is, and so I'm going to do that. So let me play it again. Remember, here's 1 beat. So that means there are 3 beats missing. You can also use this as an introduction, but there's 1 beat here and 3 beats are missing. Where are the other 3 beats? Right here. This is a 3-beat measure instead of a 4-beat. So you can say this finishes it out. Now you're not playing it. When you play that last note, you're not going back and playing that again. But mathematically, here's 3 beats and you're missing a beat. Well, I'm also missing 3 beats up here. And so if I put them together, I still get a 4-beat measure, even though I've split the measure and I'm not playing them at the same time. It just makes it mathematically correct. So just try to watch. This is going to be in the key of G. How do I know it's in the key of G? I've got an F sharp. The F sharp makes it in the key of G. And sometime I'm going to explain to you why that is. It's not that hard to understand, but I don't want to push too much on you at the same time because you'll just get confused. So I'm going to play this slow. And remember, this is 1 beat. So this would be, if I were conducting it, this would be the upbeat. The first beat, what's called the downbeat, is the first beat of the measure. And each measure has a quarter note for the first note, for the first down note of the whole piece. So let me read that. Just try to follow it and see if you can follow it all right. Now what I could do is I could have made a repeat sign right here, it's short, and repeated right up here. And even if I put a repeat sign there, I might not even bother with a repeat sign up there. So how would I know that I go back there? It's because there's no other place I can go. If this is going to be repeated, then I've got to go right from the beginning because that's where it starts and there's no repeat sign to tell me where else to go. Now, if I were to write a repeat sign like from here, say to here, I would go, when I hit the repeat sign here, I would go back and just play this again. I wouldn't play the whole thing. If you have two repeat signs, then you have one repeat sign that you are looking at, and then you go back to the other repeat sign where the dots are just opposite. I think what I should do next time is just draw this out for you so you can see it. So what have I done? This is a practice piece, and I have done triplets and I have done octaves, and it's all tonguing, there's no slurring. And what makes this a good exercise is, one, it does have a melody to it, and it repeats the high and low D all the way through. It repeats, except for here, in which case I can do a G or I can do the D. And that gives you some experience in learning how to do the octave. The high D, it is the second note down, and that's the only note that's covered. I don't even use my thumb in the back. So what holds this instrument in place? Well, one thing, I've got it in my mouth, and the other thing is I can put my hand down and hold it. I've got my thumb in back, so I'm balancing it out. I'm holding it with the one note here that I'm playing, so my hand is on it. It's in my mouth, that's kind of holding it in place, and I can put my right thumb, and there's no place specifically to put it, but I can put it in the back, and that supports it from the back. You have to be careful because, you know, with some of these notes, it is easy to drop. And I've known people to drop recorders all the time. I've done it myself occasionally before I became more experienced. And some of the larger instruments, of course, have straps around your neck, and there would be a little hook in the back, and you attach the strap to the back. The saxophones have them because they're larger and heavier. The bass recorders have them. There are any number of instruments that have a strap. You put it around your neck, you hook it in the back, and that, first of all, it helps to support it and helps to lift it because those instruments are heavy. Some of them are heavy. And the other thing is, as you're doing different fingerings, you're not going to lose your grip to the point where the instrument's going to fall because it's being held up by the strap. I have a bass recorder, and part of the mechanism to hold up the instrument has somehow disappeared. It broke off or something, and so therefore I can't really use a strap. So I play the notes and just hope that I don't drop it, and so far I haven't. I hold it tight enough. I don't have to have the strap to play it, but it's helpful to have the strap to play it. So for this, reading it, let me see. Let me get this out. Treble clef, 4/4 time. You always want to know what your time is. 4 beats to a measure, and the beat that's the type of note getting 1 beat would be the quarter note because that 4 is there. That sharp, this is the key signature. That sharp on the F tells me that it's going to be in the key of G. Now, there's reasons for that, and I don't want to get into it now because I don't want to confuse you, but I will show you what the circle of fifths are and how you can figure out what key you're in. Every 5 notes adding a sharp, or every 5 notes adding a flat. So here is your key signature, and it doesn't say key of G, but it is because of the F sharp. And then here's your triplet, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, because these triplets, each triplet is 1 beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it goes all the way. And then when you get to the last note, that is a dotted half. That's automatically 3 beats. But the 4th beat isn't there. So you can say, well, there's only 1 beat. These triplets are 1 beat. So this is 1 beat, and this is 3 beats, the equivalent being 4 beats, as if you had a 4-beat measure. Or you can say, here's 1 beat, and here are the other 3 right here. So mathematically, technically, even though you're not playing them at the same time, you do get a beat out of it, so it ends up by being 4 beats, just like the rest of them. I hope this starts making sense to you, because it is an interesting thing. Now, here again, when you're playing your D, this is another reason for me to write it, is to give you practice in learning how to play D. If you remembered, I don't know how long you've been watching, but remember, I always use this, B, A, G, F, E, D. That's 6 notes. The scale only has 8 notes, so therefore that's most of them. B, A, G, F, E, D, bag fed. That's what I used to teach the kids when I had them. You know, remember those 2 words. So that low D is every note covered, and my thumb on the thumb hole in the back, and my other thumb helping to support the instrument. It doesn't have a place to put it, but you can put it pretty much anywhere that's comfortable. There are some of these little wind instruments that have a place, and they have a little circle or some kind of a indentation or something, so you know that's where you put your right thumb. It doesn't affect your playing at all. It just adds to the balance of the instrument, and you do need to have that thumb somewhere to help balance it. Low D, high D, I actually can still put my 4th finger on what that D is, lift up my fingers, but keep that lowest one on. That's not going to affect the pitch of it. If I were to put this down, you would get another note because it's following in that pattern. But I'm skipping these 2 and just using this, and that helps to support too. And if I think of it, sometimes I do that, but I don't have to do that. It's just a case of what's more comfortable for you. So when you're playing the octave, and the way that this music, that I wrote it, you have, here's your high D, it comes first, and then your low D, the high D, and then the low D. So we need to learn to play it in the other direction. So, if I play that G, I actually prefer the G to the D, but if I want to keep the pattern, I can still play that high D, low D, but if I want to, it changes it a little bit, but the following note is also a G, and I think that may be a little bit better. Now, when I was playing the D there, I was using this fingering, which they tell me I can't use, but I do it. Because the balance is a lot better. Because you've got those 3 fingers down. A flute, and I do a lot of flute work, that D, because you're holding the instrument like this, you lift that finger and you get the D. You can play the low D and just lift that finger and get one of the high Ds. However, the recorder really isn't made to do that, but some can. This is an alternate fingering, and if you use it, you have to be really sure that the instrument can do it and it remains in pitch. Now, this is a really nice recorder, and I can do lots of fingerings on this that I might not be able to do on a less expensive instrument. And I'm not saying this is an expensive instrument. This instrument is a nice instrument. It's a Japanese instrument. They do a wonderful job, but it's not the most expensive. But some less expensive, you get pitch changes because it wasn't made to do it that way. And so therefore you're not able to use the alternate fingerings, but I can with this one, and so sometimes I do. Does that seem better than each way you can do it, but the recorder does it this way. But if I do the flute fingering, I just open this one finger and keep the others down. It doesn't seem to affect the pitch at all. So, so this is just kind of an exercise. What's the difference between an exercise and a song? Not really, not really much, except the exercise is teaching you something. You're getting practice playing a certain type of note, or you're getting experience in learning new fingerings, or new timing, or scale work, and all of that. And that's what exercises are written for. But I like to do it in a musical way because it's much more pleasant to listen to. I mean, I could do this all day, but it's not going to sound very great, and it's going to be boring after a while. But if I do it in a song, you still get the experience of doing the octaves in a musical sense. It makes it better. So we're about out of time. I'm going to close it here. We'll be doing something else next time. Please join me then. And remember, if you have any questions, email me and I'll try to get back to you.